Hello children, welcome to digital lessons. Have you ever observed what happened to our feet after overnight journey in a sitting position without moving? We feel that our footwear will become little tight. Can you know the reason for this? So we can know in detail why this happened. Children, we know that the blood received by the veins from the body parts and pumped into the heart. The heart pumped the blood into the arteries and then into the arterioles, and finally the blood reaches the capillaries. To supply nutrients to the cells and tissues, the liquid portion of the blood come out of the capillaries, that is called tissue fluid. So, the tissue fluid which is present in the tissues should be sent to the bloodstream again. Some amount of tissue fluid is received by venules, which in turn form veins, which pumps to the main bloodstream. What about the remaining tissue fluid? To pump the remaining tissue fluid, there is a separate system. That system is called lymphatic system. Children, observe the picture of a lymphatic system. So, this is the lymphatic system. Lymphatic system is the extensive network of lymphatic vessels. The lymphatic system is an organ system in vertebrates, that is part of the circulatory system and the immune system. The lymphatic system is a network of tissues and organs that help in the body get rid of toxins, waste and other unwanted materials. The lymphatic system consists of lymphatic vessels and also lymphatic organs such as spleen, thymus, tonsils, etc. Appendix is also a part of the lymphatic system. When the tissue fluid enters the lymph vessels, it is called lymph. In Latin, lymph means water. Children, observe the picture of lymph vessels and lymph capillaries. So, the lymphatic system is the extensive network of thin-walled vessels called lymphatic vessels. So, they arise as blind-ended capillaries from the tissues and they receive the tissue fluid. When the tissue fluid enters the lymph capillary or lymph vessel, it is called lymph. It is the parallel system to the venous system, which can collect tissue fluid from the tissues and drain out into the venous system. The lymph vessels are provided with valves. So, the minute vessels which are present between the tissues are called lymph capillaries. The lymph capillaries together to form lymphatic vessels. The excess of fluid is collected by lymph capillaries and they together form the lymphatic vessels. The lymph pumped into the lymphatic vessels. The valves which are present in the lymphatic vessels pump the lymph in forward direction. Lymph is the vital link between blood and cells or tissues by which essential substances pass from blood to cells and excretory products from cells to blood. The muscles which are attached to the skeleton or skeletal muscle act as pumps when they contract and help in pushing the lymph flowing in lymphatic vessels and the blood flowing in veins towards the heart. Lymph contains water, some plasma proteins, electrolytes, leukocytes, some coagulation factors, antibodies, enzymes, hormones, vitamins and nutrients, etc. Lymph transports lymphocytes from the lymphatic glands to the blood. They protect the body by their phagocytic properties. Lymph returns some extracellular fluid and waste collected from the body parts to the blood. It destroys the invading microorganisms and foreign particles. Children, let us observe the differences between blood and lymph. Blood is a reddish color fluid, whereas lymph is a colorless fluid. Blood contains liquid and solid particles. whereas lymph contains only liquid particles. Here liquid particles in the blood are nothing but plasma, which contains salts and proteins, whereas the solid part includes red blood cells, white blood cells and platelets. Here lymph contains only liquid particles, that means it contains only plasma, whereas solid particles are absent, that means RBC is completely absent in lymph. Little amount of WBC and platelets are present. Children, after a overnight journey in sitting position without moving, there is the accumulation of fluid in the some parts of the body because of the fluid not drained into the main bloodstream properly. This accumulation of fluid in the particular parts of the body is called edema. Edema is the medical term for swelling. To avoid edema, do a few minutes of walking and simple leg exercises. The circulatory system is categorized into two types. They are open circulatory system and closed circulatory system. Children, observe the open circulatory system. Here the blood, instead of flowing in the blood vessels, directly supplying the nutrients to the tissues, and oxygen is directly supplied by the respiratory system. So the type of circulatory system where the blood supply the nutrients directly to the tissues is called open type of circulatory system. In this type of circulatory system, blood vessels are poorly developed. So the blood directly floods the tissues and supplies the nutrients. It is the poor type of circulatory system. We can observe this type of circulatory system in arthropods, many mollusks and lower chordates. Children, observe another picture of circulatory system. Here the blood takes the responsibility of delivering materials like food and oxygen, and which flows in the blood vessels is called closed type of circulatory system. Here the blood flows in the blood vessels and supplies nutrients to the tissues. This type of circulatory system is seen in annelids, echinoderms, cephalopod mollusks and all the higher chordates. It is the very developed circulatory system. Children, let us compare the closed and open circulatory systems. Here this is the closed circulatory system which is present in the earthworm, which belongs to the phylum Annelida. Open circulatory system present in bee, which belongs to the phylum Arthropoda. Children, in this circulatory system, the blood flows in the blood vessels and supplies nutrients to the tissues, whereas in the open circulatory system, the blood flows freely in the body cavity. Here the blood vessels are poorly developed. This is the open type of circulatory system. It is the most primitive type of circulatory system over closed circulatory system. Children, we might have experienced an injuries. When an injury takes place, blood clots in 3 to 6 minutes. Children, we might have experienced an injuries. When there is an injury, the blood clots in 3 to 6 minutes. Children, observe the blood vessel here. When the injury takes place, the blood clots within few minutes, that is 3 to 6 minutes. Children, you have learnt about blood in your previous class. Blood contains different types of blood cells. Let us see the blood cells which are present in the blood. Children, observe the picture of the blood. The blood contains red blood cells, white blood cells and platelets. Here the platelets are responsible for the clotting of the blood. Blood also contains some clotting factors which are responsible for the clotting of the blood. Children, let us see the mechanism of the clotting of blood. When there is an injury, the blood flows out. When the blood flows out, the platelets release an enzyme called thrombokinase. Thrombokinase, when it releases from the blood, it acting on the blood clotting substance prothrombin, which is in inactive state, converting it into active thrombin. Then active thrombin acting on the another substance which is present in the blood, which is in soluble state, converting it into insoluble fibrin fibers. The blood cells are entangled in the fibrin fibers to form a clot. Here the fibrin fibers are attached to the walls of the vessel and form a clot. The vitamin K plays a important role in blood clotting mechanism. Children, there is the yellowish fluid coming out from the wound called serum. After formation of the blood clot, a yellowish fluid is coming out from the wound, that is called serum. Why it is coming out from the wound? Because the clotting factors are absent, that is why it is coming out. So children, observe the flow chart of blood clotting. When there is an injury, the tissues release platelets and clotting factor thrombokinase or prothrombin activator and calcium ions. The thrombokinase acting on the prothrombin and converting it into thrombin. Thrombin acting on another substance which is present in the blood, that is fibrinogen, and converting it into fibrin fibers. Fibrin fibers form a mesh-like structure in which blood cells are trapped. Then there is the formation of the clot and bleeding stops. Vitamin K is essential for blood clotting and prevents excessive bleeding. Generally, the blood comes out of the wound and clots within 3 to 6 minutes. But in some people, because of the vitamin K deficiency, the blood may not coagulate. This type of genetic disorder is called hemophilia. Hemophilia is a common disorder in children who are born from marriages between the very close relatives. Children, up to now we have discussed about transportation in humans. Humans have special type of transportation organs. They are heart and blood vessels. What about plants? How plants transport their materials? Do you think is this same in both plants and animals? Is there any specialized structures in plants to transport the materials? Children, you have studied about xylem and phloem in your previous classes. You know that xylem transports the water from roots, whereas the phloem transports food materials to the various parts of the plant. Children, let us recall the activity that you have performed in your lower classes. This is the experiment conducted by von Helmont. According to von Helmont, plants absorb water and minerals from the soil and they increases in mass. Here the plants absorb water and minerals from the soil and they increases in size. So plants absorb water through the roots and they also absorb minerals from the soil through the roots. Children, you know about the vascular bundles. What are the vascular bundles? Xylem and phloem are the vascular bundles. Xylem situated towards the exterior in root, whereas in the stem it arranged in bundles towards the center. How water transported to the plant by the roots? What is the role of the xylem in the transportation of the water? Are roots directly in contact with water? How water is absorbed? Let us see. For this activity, you need to germinate mustard or bajra seeds. Observe the mass of fine threads coming from the seed. Those are roots. On the surface of the roots, there are fine microscopic structures called root hairs. The root hairs absorbs the water from the soil. Gently take the portion of the root hair, place it on the slide, put a drop of water on it, cover it with cover slip, tap the cover slip gently with the blunt end of a needle or brush to spread the material evenly on the slide. Then observe under the microscope. What will you observe, children? After observing under the microscope, you may see the root hair. So, this is unicellular. The root hair absorbs water from the soil. Children, you might have studied about osmosis in your previous class. What is osmosis? Osmosis is a process by which molecules of a substance tend to pass through a semi-permeable membrane from a less concentrated solution to a more concentrated solution. Children, let us observe the picture of root and root hair. Children, observe the roots, how they penetrates into the soil. The root hairs grows into the soil particles and they are surrounded by moisture. Here, every living cell acts as an osmotic system and the cell wall of the root hair acts as semi-permeable membrane. The soil water is an extremely dilute solution of salts. The soil water concentration is more dilute than that of the cell sap of the root hair. So, the water passes into the vacuole of the root hair by the process of osmosis. Children, already you know that osmosis is a process by which essential substances are passed from a less concentrated solution to more concentrated solution through a semi-permeable membrane. Here, osmosis process takes place. The water from the soil enters into the vacuole of the root hair because of here concentration is very low, here concentration of the cell sap of the root hair is very high. So, the water enters into the vacuole of the root hair. Then the contents of the vacuole becomes more diluted than that of the neighboring cell. Then the water passes into the neighboring cell, which in turn becomes more diluted and finally the water reaches the xylem vessels. So, there are vast number of root hair and root hair cells are involved. A pressure in the xylem vessel develops, which causes the movement of water in upward direction. This pressure is called root pressure. The root pressure is the one of the factor which causes the movement of water in the xylem vessels. Let us know in detail about root pressure by doing one more activity. For this, we need a regularly watered potted plant. Cut the stem portion 1 cm above the ground level. Then connect a glass tube to the stem by using rubber tube. The size of the glass tube should be equal to the size of the stem. Take care while joining the tube to the stem being bound tightly so that water cannot escape from the tube. Now, pour water in the glass tube until the water level can be seen above the rubber tube. Mark the water level as M1 in the tube. Keep your arrangement aside for 2 to 3 hours. Then after observe the arrangement. What you will observe? Is there an increase in the water level? Yes. Mark the increased water level as M2 in the tube. What causes increased water level in the tube? Here, root pressure causes the increased water level in the tube. What is the role of the xylem in this activity? Xylem transports the water from the roots to the various parts of the body. Children, observe the tree. How the water reaches that much of height? Children, when we keep fruits or vegetables in a polythene cover, we may observe moisture inside the cover after some time. Let us recall the activity we have performed in earlier classes. Why does the inner side of the cover become moist? What is the reason? We know that this type of evaporation of water through the leaves is called transpiration. The water majorly evaporates through the stomata of the leaves and some amount of water through the lenticels which are present on the stem. Children, water evaporation takes place through the stomata. When the leaves transpire, there is a pulling effect on the continuous columns of water in the xylem vessels. The top ends of the xylem vessels are surrounded by the leaves mesophyll cells which contain cell sap. So, the water is continuous from the xylem vessels to the walls of the mesophyll cells, from which it evaporates into the air spaces, causing the pull. The water columns does not break because of continuous molecular attraction. We can see this type of property while drinking water through a straw. The evaporation creates the main pull of water above root pressure, which gives a minor push from below. This results in continuous columns of moving water, the transpiration stream. Transpiration stream means the flow of water through a plant from the roots to the leaves via xylem vessels. The transpiration stream is important because it provides leaves with a continuous supply of water for photosynthesis. It continuously transports minerals from the roots to the leaves and other parts of the plant. Children, observe the flow chart of transpiration. The root absorb the water from the soil with the help of root hair. The water enters into the xylem vessels of root and then flowed into the xylem vessels of stem and then flows into the xylem vessels of branches and then finally into the leaves. From the leaves, the water evaporates outside through the stomata. Now, I think you understood about the water conducting system in a plant. Children, is there any relation between transpiration and rainfall? Yes, there is a relation between transpiration and rainfall. Water evaporates through the stomata by the process of transpiration and they process forms clouds. When the air currents brings air nearer to the clouds, it becomes fully saturated and come down as rain. So, more transpiration leads to more rainfall. That is why the forest areas have higher rainfall than nearby areas. Children, the minerals are essential for the plant growth and development. We know that roots absorb water. The roots also absorbs the minerals from the soil. Children, we know that the nutrients are essential for the plant growth and development. Plants absorb water and nutrients through roots from the soil. Salts like sodium chloride is in the form of sodium positive and chlorine negative, whereas magnesium sulfate is in the form of magnesium positive and sulfate negative. The salts are not absorbed directly into the roots by the simple process of diffusion. It involves the use of energy by the cytoplasm. Once the salts are absorbed, they travel along with water in the roots and into the xylem vessels and they reaches the growing parts of the plant. Once ions are absorbed, they travel along with water. Let us observe the picture, children. Once ions are absorbed, they travel along with water. Already we know that water travels through the root hair and reaches the xylem vessels and flows towards the upward direction. So, like this, when the salts are also travels along with water and they reach the growing parts of the plant wherever they are necessary. Children, up to now we have studied about water conducting system in a plant. What about the food materials? How the food materials are transported in the plant? We know that phloem transports the food materials. The food materials are prepared by the green parts of the plant called leaves. The leaves have xylem and phloem, they are connected with the stem. The food which is prepared by the leaves is transported to the various parts of the body. How the food is transported through the phloem? Let us see the activity which can explain the transportation of food material through the phloem. Children, observe the picture. Here you see aphid feed on the plant juices. To obtain this juice, an aphid pierces its long needle-like organ called proboscis into the plant tissues. The proboscis only penetrates up to phloem level. An aphid is killed while in the act of feeding and then the body is carefully cut away, leaving the hollow proboscis still inserted into the phloem. It is found that because of the contents of the phloem sieve tubes are under slight pressure, the fluid exudes from the cut end of the proboscis in the form of drops. These drops can be collected and analyzed. The drops contains sugars and amino acids. Now we can state that food is transported through the phloem. An aphid absorbs so much amount of sugar, but it cannot assimilate all of it. So it excretes excess of sugar in the form of a sticky syrup called honeydew. Children, observe the picture of a leaf. Leaves which have been affected by the aphids often feel sticky as a result of honeydew. Children, you may notice that sometimes barks of the tree were damaged more than a half, but still the tree is alive. Can you know the reason for it? Children, we know that xylem and phloem transports the materials like water and food. Here bark is the dermal tissue, it cannot transport any material. So, if the bark is damaged, the tree is alive because of there are xylem and phloem tissues in the tree. Children, here is one more experiment to illustrate the transportation of food through the phloem. Children, observe the picture. Remove a ring of bark from a shoot to expose the wood. Remove all the tissues from the center outwards, including the phloem. After a few days, when the tissues above and below the ring were analyzed, it was shown that the food had accumulated above the ring, but was not present below it. If it is left for some more time, the stem increases in thickness immediately above the ring, but no growth takes place below the ring. So, any damage occurs to the phloem, there may not be transportation of food materials to the remaining parts of the tree. Here in the previous experiment, the phloem tissues are removed from the ring. So, the food material cannot pass to the lower part of the ring. So, the tree will eventually die. This is the fact of great economic importance because certain mammals scratching the bark of trees to get the food stored in the phloem, especially during hard winters when food is scarce. Voles do this to young saplings at ground level, and rabbits can do much damage to older ones. Children, improve your learning by solving the following questions. Differentiate between blood and lymph. What is root pressure? How it is useful to the plant? What will happen if cell sap of root hair cells contain high concentration of ions? How scientists prove that the food is transported through the phloem? Children, I hope you understood well. We will meet in another session. Visit the official website of SCERT for worksheets of this lesson to improve your learning. Thank you.